He still remembered the exact moment everything cracked. Not during a shootout, not in a back room filled with men begging for mercy, not even when he signed orders that ruined lives with a nod. It happened in a government building that smelled like old coffee and disinfectant, under flickering fluorescent lights, while a child stared at the floor like it had personally betrayed her. Her file slid across the metal desk toward him by mistake. 7 families. Returned. 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 Each word stamped in red felt louder than a gunshot. The man known across 3 states as Victor Hale did not pick up children's files. He was there to resolve a licensing issue tied to one of his legitimate businesses, a charity foundation used mostly as camouflage. He was supposed to stand, shake hands, leave. Instead, his eyes stopped on the thin girl sitting alone on a plastic chair near the wall. She couldn't have been more than 10, maybe 11. Brown hair pulled into a ponytail that was too tight, like someone had tried to make her look manageable. Her shoes were scuffed. Her hands rested neatly on her knees. She wasn't crying. That was what unsettled him. Kids who had been abandoned usually cried, or lashed out, or tried to perform. This one did none of that. She looked resigned, as if she'd already learned something most adults spent their lives avoiding. Victor didn't know her name yet, but he felt the strange, uncomfortable pull of recognition. Not familiarity, guilt, the kind that crept in sideways and refused to explain itself. The social worker apologized quickly, embarrassed, pulling the folder back as if it were radioactive. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hale, that's not—" "How many?" Victor asked, his voice calm, practiced, dangerous in its softness. The woman hesitated. 7. She's difficult to place. Victor's jaw tightened. Difficult. That word had been used on him once too, right before the foster home burned down, right before the system decided it had done enough. He looked at the girl again. She didn't look up, but something in her posture shifted, like she felt the weight of his attention without needing to see him. 3 paragraphs into the moment, Victor realized his hands were clenched. "But before we continue, I want to make a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and are enjoying my stories, and comment below which city you're watching us from. Now let's continue. Victor Hale had rules. He lived because of them. Rule 1. Never involve children. They were liabilities, mirrors, triggers. He had built his empire by cutting emotional ties the way surgeons cut nerves. Clean, necessary, final. So he should have walked away. Instead, he asked to meet her. They brought her into a small interview room with a one-way mirror. Victor watched as she sat across from him, legs swinging slightly, eyes finally lifting. Not with hope, with assessment. That, more than anything, shook him. "What's your name?" he asked. She studied him for a second too long. "Lena," she said. Her voice was quiet, steady. "They call me Lena." "They?" Victor echoed. She shrugged. "The families. Not my families, not my parents. The families. Like hotels you checked out of early." Victor leaned back in his chair. He was good at reading people. He'd built his life on it. But this child wasn't playing defense or offense. She was waiting, as if the outcome was already decided, and this was just the last formality. "Do you know why they sent you back?" he asked. Lena tilted her head, thinking. "They didn't like when I asked questions." "What kind of questions?" She hesitated, then met his eyes directly. The kind that make people quiet. Something cold slid down Victor's spine. He had spent decades silencing people like that. The social worker cleared her throat nervously. "She's perceptive. Some families found it unsettling." Victor almost laughed. Instead, he nodded slowly. He dismissed the woman and asked for a moment alone with the girl. It should have been denied. It wasn't. His name carried weight, even here. When they were alone, Lena's shoulders relaxed by a fraction. She studied the room, the mirror, the corners. "You're not like the others," she said. Victor raised an eyebrow. "No? They tried to be nice," she continued. "You're not trying." He didn't know why, but that honesty landed harder than any insult. "Why do you think you're here?" he asked. She looked down at her hands. "Because no one wants to keep me." Victor inhaled slowly. He had heard confessions from killers that carried less truth than that sentence. "What if I told you," he said carefully, "that sometimes people don't send you away because you're wrong, but because you see too much?" She considered this. Then she asked, "Do you see too much?" He almost answered honestly, almost told her about the nights he woke up smelling smoke, about the boy he used to be, about the empire built to outrun memory. Instead, he said, "I see enough." They sat in silence after that, not awkward, heavy, like something settling. When the social worker returned, Victor stood. "I want custody," he said simply. The woman blinked. "Temporary foster placement requires—" "I'll meet every requirement," Victor interrupted. "Background checks, home inspections, psych evaluations. I'll fund whatever department needs funding to make sure this is done by the book." Lena's head snapped up. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, curiosity. As they walked out of the building together, Victor felt eyes on his back. He could already sense the ripple this would cause. Rivals would whisper. Allies would question his judgment. The system would probe for weakness. They were right to. Because as Lena stepped into the sunlight beside him, squinting like someone emerging from a cave, Victor realized something terrifying. For the first time in his life, he wasn't taking control of a situation. He was stepping into one he didn't understand. And somewhere deep inside, a voice he thought he'd buried whispered a dangerous thought. This girl wasn't here to be saved. She was here to change him. Victor Hale did not sleep that night. The house he brought Lena to sat on a hill overlooking the Hudson, a fortress disguised as modern architecture. Glass walls, steel bones, silence thick enough to suffocate. Men guarded the perimeter in rotating shifts, trained to notice everything and feel nothing. That was the rule here. Children had never crossed the threshold. Victor stood in the kitchen long after midnight, staring at the security monitor that showed the guest room hallway. Lena's door was closed. Too closed. He recognized that instinct. Doors shut tight meant a child prepared for sudden exits, not comfort. He poured himself a drink, then didn't touch it. This wasn't part of any plan. He had made decisions under pressure before, split-second choices that shifted the balance of entire cities. But this one hadn't come from strategy. It had come from somewhere older. Somewhere he had sealed off when he was 16 and decided survival mattered more than softness. Down the hall, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, shoes still on. Her small backpack rested in her lap. Everything she owned fit inside it. Victor knew because he'd checked the intake report. She listened. The house breathed differently than the places she'd known. No shouting, no televisions blaring. No fake laughter stretched thin over resentment. Just quiet footsteps and distant water pipes. She didn't trust it. Victor finally moved, walking down the hall with measured steps, announcing himself by turning on lights as he went. He knocked once. "Lena," he said, "you don't have to sleep yet." The door opened slowly. She looked up at him, guarded but not afraid. "I wasn't going to," she said. "They usually wake me up early when they change their minds." That sentence landed in his chest like a blunt object. "No one's changing their mind," Victor said. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Not tonight." She searched his face the way adults searched contracts. "You don't sound sure." He almost smiled. "That's because I don't lie to kids." She nodded, as if that answer made sense. Then she stepped back, letting him see the room. She hadn't touched anything. Not the books, not the neatly folded clothes left by the staff. As if claiming space might make it disappear. Victor leaned against the doorframe. "Hungry?" She shook her head. "I don't eat at new places." "Why not?" "Because if you like it, you might miss it." He closed his eyes for a brief second. Too many people had taught her that lesson. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll make rules." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Rules?" "Yes. Mine and yours." She hesitated. "What are mine?" He thought for a moment. "You don't have to talk when you don't want to. You don't have to call me anything you're not ready to. And no one touches your things without asking." Her grip on the backpack loosened. Just a little. "And yours?" she asked. "My rules," he exhaled. "You don't wander outside alone. You tell me when something scares you and you don't lie to me." She considered this. "What happens if I break a rule?" Victor's voice was steady. "Then we talk about it." That answer confused her more than anger ever could. The next morning the house woke to something unfamiliar. The sound of footsteps that were too light, too cautious. Lena moved like someone trying not to leave evidence of her existence. Victor watched her from across the table as she examined breakfast laid out by the staff. Eggs, toast, fruit, options meant to impress. She chose none of them. Instead, she poured herself a glass of water and sat with her hands folded. You can eat, Victor said gently. She shook her head. I'll wait. For what? For you to leave the room. Victor frowned. Why? Because when adults watch me eat, they decide things. That was when he understood something critical. This child hadn't been rejected because she was difficult. She had been studied. Over the next days, Victor adjusted. Meetings were rescheduled. Men were reassigned. The house softened at the edges in ways no one dared comment on. Lena remained quiet, observant, absorbing patterns. She learned names faster than Victor liked. She noticed who avoided eye contact and who lingered too long. Once she asked him why one of his men flinched every time the phone rang. Victor answered honestly, because he's waiting for bad news. She nodded. Everyone is. That night, Victor dreamed of his own childhood for the first time in years. A narrow hallway, a slammed door, a voice telling him he asked too many questions. He woke before dawn, heart racing, and sat on the edge of his bed wondering when the girl had started rearranging rooms inside his head. The social worker visited on the fourth day, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp with suspicion. Victor played his role flawlessly. Calm, cooperative, impeccable. Lena sat beside him on the couch, hands folded, gaze distant. Do you feel safe here? The woman asked. Lena glanced at Victor, then back. Safer than before. Why? She answered without hesitation. Because he doesn't pretend to be kind. The woman looked unsettled. Victor almost laughed. That evening, as Victor walked Lena to her room, she stopped at the door. Why did you really take me? She asked. He didn't answer right away. He searched for something acceptable, strategic, false. Instead, he said, because you didn't try to make me like you. She thought about that. Then she said something that shifted the ground beneath him. That's because I wasn't looking for someone to like me. She paused, eyes steady. I was looking for someone who wouldn't send me back. Victor nodded slowly. In the dark of the hallway, surrounded by armed men and silent cameras, a truth settled into him with terrifying clarity. He had taken in a child believing he was the one in control. But Lena wasn't waiting to be chosen. She was waiting to see if he would stay. Victor Hale learned the truth the way he learned everything else, quietly, thoroughly, and without asking permission. He did not start with Lena. He started with files. By the end of the first week, he had every foster report, evaluation, and handwritten notes scanned and laid out across the long dining table. 7 families, 7 explanations, none of them matched, non-compliant, emotionally distant, inappropriate questions, disturbing honesty. Victor's jaw tightened as he read. These weren't behavioral issues. These were excuses, the kind people used when the real reason made them uncomfortable. He closed his eyes and saw Lena sitting at the table, refusing breakfast unless no one watched her. The way she studied people like puzzles, the way silence followed her questions. He called in Marcus, one of his most trusted men, not a soldier, an observer. I want you to look into these families, Victor said. Not criminal, human. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's a new category. Treat it like a pattern, Victor replied, because it is. While Marcus worked, Victor paid closer attention to Lena. She was polite, too polite. She cleaned up after herself obsessively. She never asked for anything, never tested boundaries the way children were supposed to. Instead, she watched for cracks. One afternoon, she sat on the floor of Victor's office, quietly lining up books by height. She didn't notice him watching. Why do you do that? He asked. She didn't look up. If things are neat, people think you're good. And if they think you're good, they keep you? She stopped moving the books. No, she said. They just wait longer before they give up. That night, Marcus came back with a look Victor recognized. Disgust, controlled. First family, Marcus said. Sent her back after 3 weeks. Official reason, emotional withdrawal, and unofficial. They were fighting, loud, constant. She asked the mother why she stayed if she was scared. Next day the girl was gone. Victor exhaled slowly. Second family, Marcus continued. Religious. Claimed Lena was disruptive. She asked the father why he preached forgiveness, but yelled at his wife in private. Victor closed his eyes. Third, Marcus said, sent her back after she told a caseworker the foster brother hit her when the parents weren't home. Victor's hand tightened around the edge of the table. And the others? Marcus hesitated. Same story, different faces. She noticed things adults worked hard to hide, and she said them, calmly. No accusation, just truth. Victor leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. 7 families hadn't sent Lena back because she was broken. They sent her back because she was a mirror. That realization followed him for days. Lena didn't ask questions often, but when she did, they landed with precision. "Why does that man lie when you ask him where he was?" she asked once, pointing at a security monitor. "Why do people say they're sorry if they're not going to stop? Why do adults think kids don't notice fear?" Victor answered when he could. When he couldn't, he told her the truth. "I don't know." She seemed to respect that more than reassurance, but truth had a cost. One evening, Victor was in the middle of a tense call with a business partner when Lena walked into the room. She stopped, listening. "Tell him I'll sign," Victor said into the phone, his voice calm, controlled. Lena frowned. When the call ended, she asked, "Why did you agree if you don't trust him?" Victor froze. "What makes you think I don't trust him?" he asked carefully. "Your shoulders," she said. "They get tight when you lie." Victor laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You shouldn't say things like that," he said. "Why?" she asked. "Is it dangerous?" He looked at her, really looked at her. A child who had been punished over and over for telling the truth, yet hadn't learned to stop. "Yes," he said quietly. "Sometimes it is." She nodded, absorbing this. "That's why they sent me back." It wasn't a question. That night, Victor sat alone in his office, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. He thought about the men he trusted, the deals he'd made, the lies that kept his world standing. And he understood something that chilled him. Lena didn't just see through foster families. She would eventually see through him. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it made him feel exposed in a way he hadn't felt since he was a boy, with no one to protect him but his own instincts. The next day, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a single photo. It showed Lena at 6 years old, standing in front of a modest house, holding the hand of a woman whose face had been scratched out. Victor felt a tightness in his chest he didn't recognize. Attached was a note, typed. "She never belonged to them, and she doesn't belong to you." Victor stared at the photo, then at the words. He knew that tone. Someone was watching, and for the first time since Lena had entered his life, Victor understood the full danger of her presence, not because she was weak, but because the truth she carried had begun to surface, and there were people who would do anything to keep it buried. Victor did not show the photo to Lena. He locked it in the bottom drawer of his desk, beneath documents that could start wars if exposed. Still, the image burned behind his eyes, the scratched-out face, the certainty in the message. Someone knew where the girl had been. Someone had followed her path long enough to leave a fingerprint. He increased security without announcing it. Cameras doubled, routes changed, names rotated. The men noticed and said nothing. They were used to storms forming without warning. Lena noticed anyway. "Why are there new cars outside?" she asked, peering through the glass one morning. "Maintenance," Victor said. She studied his shoulders. "That's a lie," he sighed. "It's not the whole truth." She accepted that and went back to her cereal, eating for the first time with him still in the room. A small victory that felt heavier than it should. The pressure came from 2 sides. Child services called first. The social worker's voice was polite, but the questions sharpened. Background checks stretched longer than normal. Requests multiplied. The home visit was scheduled earlier than protocol required. Victor welcomed it. He had prepared for scrutiny his entire life. The second pressure came from the streets. At a closed-door meeting in Brooklyn, Victor's lieutenant, Elias, leaned forward, voice low. "Word is, you've got a kid living with you." Victor did not react. "Word travels. People are talking," Elias continued. "They think you've gone soft." Victor met his gaze. "People think a lot of things. They also think you've got leverage they can use." That was the real concern. Victor dismissed the meeting early. On his way out, he caught his reflection in the glass. Older than he remembered, eyes sharper, lines deeper. A man built for threats, not tenderness. Back at the house, Lena was drawing at the kitchen counter. Not pictures of people. Houses, windows carefully counted, doors always open. "What are you drawing?" Victor asked. "Places where people leave," she said. He pulled out a chair and sat. "Why not places where they stay?" She paused, pencil hovering. "I don't know what those look like yet." That afternoon, a delivery arrived without being logged. Victor's head of security intercepted it at the gate. Inside the plain cardboard box was a stuffed rabbit, old and worn, one ear torn and re-sewn. Lena recognized it instantly. She went very still. "That's mine," she said. Victor's chest tightened. "From where?" "From the second house," she said. "They said it got lost." The tag tied to the rabbit's neck held a single sentence handwritten, "Children wander, adults decide." Victor closed his fist around the tag. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't call a meeting. He made 3 phone calls and changed 5 plans. The rabbit went to Lena's room, but the message stayed with him. That night, Lena didn't sleep. Victor found her sitting on the floor by her bed, rabbit clutched to her chest, eyes open and dry. "They found me," she said. "Who?" Victor asked. She shook her head. "The people who watch." Victor sat with her until dawn. He didn't promise safety, he promised presence. "I won't send you back," he said, "no matter who asks." She nodded. "That's what they all say." "But I don't say things to feel better," he replied. "I say them because I mean them." The next day, the betrayal surfaced. Victor was reviewing financials when Lena wandered into his office and stopped mid-step. She listened, head tilted, eyes narrowing at the low murmur coming from the open window. "Who's Elias?" she asked. Victor's pen froze. "Why?" "He's angry," she said, "and scared. He thinks someone's going to take something from you." Victor closed the window slowly. Elias had been on the terrace minutes earlier, speaking in hushed tones. Too hushed. Victor felt the old clarity settle in, the calm before decisions that could not be undone. He arranged a meeting. Elias arrived confident, relaxed, the way men do when they think they're ahead of the curve. They talked business, weather, numbers. Then Victor slid the photo across the table. Elias's smile faltered. "Who sent you this?" Victor asked. Elias swallowed. "I don't know." Victor leaned forward. "That's a lie." Elias broke then. Not dramatically, efficiently. He confessed to feeding information to a rival group, not for money, but for protection. The girl had been mentioned. Her history, her movements, the leverage she represented. "She's a weakness," Elias said desperately. "They'll come for her, or use her to get to you." Victor stood. "A house built on fear cannot shelter a child," he said quietly. Elias was removed without violence, without spectacle. By morning, his name was gone from every list. Child services arrived that afternoon. The inspection went smoothly until Lena spoke. "Do you know why they sent me back?" she asked the social worker. The woman blinked. "Why, Lena?" "Because I tell the truth," she said calmly, "and people don't like it." Silence filled the room. Victor watched the social worker's expression shift, not fear, not suspicion, but something closer to shame. That night, Victor made his choice. He began dismantling the parts of his empire that thrived on silence. He cut ties, he closed doors, he prepared for consequences. Lena watched him from the stairs as boxes were carried out, as men he'd known for years disappeared from the house. "Are we leaving?" she asked. "No," Victor said, "we're staying." "For how long?" He met her gaze. "As long as it takes." Outside, the city hummed, unaware. Inside, a line had been crossed. Victor had protected himself for decades. Now, he was protecting the truth carried by a child who had been sent back 7 times, and the world would not forgive him easily for it. Chapter 5. The question that changed everything. The house felt lighter after Elias was gone, but Victor knew better than to confuse silence with peace. Power didn't vanish, it shifted, and every shift created friction. Victor spent the next days unraveling threads he himself had woven years ago. Shell companies were dissolved, accounts frozen, partnerships quietly ended. Each move was legal, clean, painful. Men called him, confused, angry, afraid. He ignored most of them. Lena noticed everything. She noticed that fewer cars waited outside, that the guards rotated less often, that Victor's phone rang late at night and sometimes went unanswered. One evening she sat across from him at the dining table, eating soup slowly, carefully, as if each spoonful mattered. "Are you getting rid of people because of me?" she asked. Victor didn't answer immediately. He had learned that pauses mattered with her. "I'm getting rid of people because they shouldn't have been here in the first place," he said. She studied his face. "But I made you see it." "Yes," he admitted. "You did." She nodded, absorbing the weight of that responsibility without celebration. Children like Lena didn't feel powerful when they changed adults. They felt guilty. Later that night, Victor found her in the living room, sitting on the floor with the stuffed rabbit beside her. The city lights reflected in the glass behind her like distant stars. "Why didn't you have kids?" she asked suddenly. The question cut deeper than any accusation. Victor sat across from her, lowering himself to the floor, something he rarely did. "Because I didn't think I was safe," he said. "For who?" "For them," he replied. "And for me." She hugged the rabbit closer. "Were you a kid like me?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "I was moved around, a lot." "Did they send you back?" "No," he said. "I ran." She looked up at him. "Where?" "Anywhere that didn't ask questions." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "If you had stayed," she said softly, "would someone have kept you?" Victor felt something give way inside his chest. He saw himself at her age, angry, sharp, already learning how to survive without permission. He saw the men he'd become, the things he'd done to never feel small again. "I don't know," he said truthfully. "But I know no one tried very hard." Lena nodded. "I tried." The words were simple. They were devastating. "Before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in his place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills." The next morning, Victor received confirmation of what he had already suspected. The rival group that had been feeding Elias information wasn't interested in Lena as leverage anymore. They were interested in erasing her, not physically. That would draw attention. Instead, they planned to expose Victor's past dealings to child services and the media, painting him as an unfit guardian, forcing Lena back into the system where she would disappear quietly. A clean solution. Victor read the report twice, then he burned it. He called his lawyer, his foundation director, and a federal investigator he had quietly assisted years earlier. Favors were called in, not threats, truths. At the same time, Lena's past surfaced more clearly. The woman in the photo. Her name had been Maria Collins, not Lena's mother, her aunt. Maria had tried to adopt Lena after her sister died, but Maria's husband had been arrested on charges tied to a distribution network Victor once controlled indirectly. The case had collapsed, but the fallout hadn't. Maria lost her job, her home. Custody was never finalized. Lena entered the system. Victor sat alone in his office when the connection became undeniable. He hadn't ordered anything. He hadn't known about Maria, but his empire had brushed against Lena's life and left it broken. For the first time, Victor understood the full weight of the girl's presence. She wasn't here by chance. She was the echo of consequences he had avoided hearing. That evening, he told her the truth. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. "There were things I did," he said, sitting beside her on the couch, "that hurt people, people I never met. One of them was connected to you." Lena listened without interruption. "Is that why they watch me?" she asked. "Yes." "Is that why you're afraid?" "Yes." She thought for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you sorry?" Victor didn't try to justify himself. He didn't explain context or intention. "Yes," he said. "More than I knew how to be." She nodded. "Okay." That was it. No anger, no tears. Just acceptance. The next day the attack came. A news inquiry. A formal review. A motion to remove Lena pending investigation. Victor walked into the hearing, calm, composed, prepared. Lena sat beside him, feet not touching the floor, hands folded. When asked if she felt safe, she answered clearly. "I feel seen," she said. "That's new for me." When asked if she wanted to stay, she looked at Victor once, then back at the panel. "Yes," she said, "because he stays even when it's hard." The room went quiet. The motion was denied. Outside, cameras flashed. Victor shielded Lena with his body, not from danger, but from noise. As they got into the car, Lena looked up at him. "Does this mean I'm staying?" she asked. Victor didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "It means you're home." But even as he said it, he knew the hardest truth was still ahead, because Lena didn't yet know how deeply their lives were tied. And when she did, everything would be tested, one last time. The weeks after the hearing were the most dangerous Victor Hale had faced in years, not because of guns or rivals or betrayal. Those were familiar threats, measurable, predictable. This danger came from exposure. Victor's name appeared in places it never had before. Non-profits, oversight committees, philanthropic reviews. The same reputation that once made doors close now forced them open. People wanted explanations, interviews, transparency. He gave them just enough. Inside the house, the transformation was quiet but unmistakable. Men who had once moved like shadows now spoke in full sentences. Weapons were locked away, then removed entirely. The perimeter stayed guarded, but the tension eased, like a fist slowly unclenching. And Lena began to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Change came in inches. She stopped sleeping with her shoes on. She left her backpack by the door, instead of clutching it at night. One morning, Victor found her sitting on the kitchen counter, legs swinging, humming softly while the staff prepared breakfast. She froze when she noticed him watching. "You don't have to stop," he said. "I wasn't supposed to start," she replied. "Why?" "Because happy noises make people expect things." Victor leaned against the doorway. "I don't expect anything from you." She studied his face, searching for cracks. Then she hummed again, quieter this time. Victor dismantled more than just his operations. He dismantled habits. He stopped disappearing for days without explanation. He started saying where he was going, when he'd be back, things no one had ever demanded of him before. One evening, Lena waited up for him, sitting on the stairs with a book she wasn't reading. "You're late," she said. "I know. You said you'd be home before dark." "I'm sorry." The word felt strange on his tongue. Necessary. Final. She nodded. "Okay." No punishment. No test. Just acknowledgement. That was when Victor realized something critical. Lena wasn't learning how to be a child. She was teaching him how to be accountable. But peace never lasted long in Victor's world. The rivals shifted tactics. When exposure failed, they turned to pressure. Anonymous tips, lawsuits, whispered allegations. None of them stuck, but they slowed everything down. One afternoon, Victor returned home to find Lena unusually quiet. She sat at the dining table, hands folded, eyes distant. "Did something happen?" he asked. She hesitated. "Someone came to see me." Victor's blood ran cold. "Who?" "A woman," Lena said. "She said she used to know my aunt." Victor sat down slowly. "What did she say?" "That you ruined her life," Lena replied calmly. "And that you're pretending to be good now because you're scared." Victor closed his eyes. "What did you tell her?" he asked. "I told her you make mistakes," Lena said. "And that you're trying to fix them." He looked at her, stunned. "You don't know everything," she nodded. "I know." "Then why defend me?" She shrugged. "Because you didn't send me away when it got hard." That night, Victor knew he could no longer delay the truth, the full truth. He waited until Lena was ready, until the house was quiet, until there were no interruptions left to hide behind. They sat in the living room, lights low, city breathing outside the glass. "There's something you need to know," Victor said. She didn't speak. She listened. "I didn't just affect your life indirectly," he continued. "The man your aunt was married to, my organization touched that case. It collapsed because of people who worked for me." Lena absorbed the words slowly, carefully. "Did you know them?" she asked. "No." "Did you mean to hurt us?" "No." "Would you undo it if you could?" "Yes." Silence stretched between them. "Then tell me everything," she said. So he did. Not details meant to impress, not stories meant to justify, just consequences, names, decisions that had rippled outward and landed in her childhood. When he finished, Lena hugged the rabbit tighter. "You're part of why I went through 7 families," she said quietly. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I was afraid you'd leave." She looked up at him then, eyes sharp, but not angry. "Where would I go?" she asked. The simplicity of that question broke something open in him. "I'm not here because you're perfect," she continued. "I'm here because you stayed." Victor felt tears sting his eyes, something he hadn't allowed in decades. "I don't forgive easily," Lena added, "but I don't leave easily either." Outside, the city lights flickered. Inside, a truth settled into place. Victor had spent his life believing redemption came from power, control, and dominance. Lena had shown him something else entirely. Redemption came from consistency, from staying, from choosing to be better even when the past demanded payment. The next morning, Victor filed paperwork he had avoided for years. Adoption papers, not provisional, Not temporary, permanent. The process would take time, reviews, delays, challenges. He was ready. As Lena walked past his office later that day, she stopped and peeked inside. "Are we okay?" she asked. Victor smiled, a real one this time. "We're building something," he said. "It takes time." She nodded. "I'm good at waiting." Victor watched her walk away, lighter now, footsteps no longer measured for escape. A house that once thrived on fear had learned how to breathe, and Victor Hale understood at last that whatever came next, loss, punishment, exposure, would be worth it. Because for the first time in his life he was not running from consequences. He was raising one. The call came at dawn. Victor recognized the number before it stopped ringing. Federal offices called early when they wanted control of the narrative. He answered without sitting up, already alert. "They're reopening the Collins case," the agent said. Not quietly. Victor closed his eyes. "Because of me. Because of you," the agent confirmed. "And because someone wants the past on the table. All of it." Victor thanked him and ended the call. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, listening to the house wake up. Footsteps, distant voices, a door opening too softly. Lena. She stood in the doorway, hair still messy from sleep, rabbit tucked under her arm. "You're awake," she said. "Yes." "You're scared," she added. He nodded. "A little." She walked in and sat beside him. No hesitation now, no measuring distance. "Is this about my aunt?" she asked. Victor's chest tightened. He had planned this conversation 100 times. None of those plans mattered now. "Yes," he said. "It's about her, and about me." She waited. "Maria Collins didn't just lose custody because of bad luck," Victor continued. "She lost it because my world touched hers. Because men who worked for me interfered with the investigation into her husband. When the case collapsed, the system stopped trusting her. They saw instability, risk. And they took me," Lena said quietly. "Yes." She stared at the floor. "She told me once that bad people don't always look bad. They just decide who matters." Victor swallowed. She was right. Silence settled between them, heavier than any argument. "Did you know about me back then?" Lena asked. "No," Victor said immediately. "If I had—" She raised her hand. "I know. You would have stopped it." "How do you know that?" he asked, voice rough. "Because you stopped other things when you found out," she replied, "even when it cost you." That trust cut deeper than accusation ever could. But the truth wasn't finished. "There's more," Victor said. "The people reopening the case aren't doing it for justice. They want leverage. They want me exposed completely. They believe if they tear me down, everything connected to me falls with it." Lena's grip on the rabbit tightened. "Including me." "Yes." For the first time since Victor had met her, Lena looked afraid. "What happens if they win?" she asked. Victor didn't lie. "They'll try to remove you. Say the environment is unsafe. Say I manipulated the system." "And will they be wrong?" she asked. He hesitated. "About my past?" "No." "About now?" she pressed. "No," he said firmly. "About now, they'll be wrong." Lena slid off the bed and walked to the window, staring out at the pale morning light. "Do you ever wish you never met me?" she asked. The question hit like a blade. "No," Victor said without hesitation. "Meeting you is the only thing that ever made sense." She turned to him then, eyes bright but steady. "Then don't protect me by lying," she said. "Protect me by letting me choose." Victor stood slowly. "Choose what?" "Whether I stay," Lena replied, "even if it gets ugly." The hearing was scheduled within days. This time, it wasn't just child services, federal observers, media, oversight committees. Everything Victor had tried to keep separate now collided in one room. Before they left the house, Lena stopped him. "I want to say something," she said. Victor frowned. "You don't have to." "I know," she said. "That's why it matters." The room was packed. Flashbulbs, whispers, faces hungry for collapse. Victor sat straight, composed, the man they expected to see. Lena swung her legs beside him, small and unafraid. When it was her turn to speak, the room stilled. "They keep asking why I stayed," Lena said clearly. "They think kids don't know the difference between being kept and being controlled." Murmurs rippled. "I went through 7 families," she continued. "They all sent me back. Not because I was bad, because I saw things." She looked directly at the panel. "He didn't hide who he was," she said. nodding toward Victor. He changed, slowly, out loud, where I could see it. A reporter raised a hand. "Are you saying a former crime figure is a good guardian?" Lena didn't blink. "I'm saying people aren't their worst thing forever, and kids shouldn't be punished for adults' pasts." The room went silent. Victor felt something loosen inside his chest. Not relief, pride. The decision took hours. When it came, it was final. The motion to remove Lena was denied permanently. The adoption process was approved to proceed without further obstruction. Oversight would continue, but the choice had been made. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Victor shielded Lena again, but this time she stepped forward. "I wasn't sent back this time," she said calmly. "I stayed." That night, Victor sat alone in his office, staring at the adoption papers on his desk. The cost of what he had done was now unavoidable. Investigations would continue. Some of his past would never be erased. But something else had been sealed. Lena stood in the doorway. "Are you okay?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I think so." She nodded. "Good, because tomorrow I want pancakes." Victor laughed, a real sound, unguarded. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll make pancakes." And for the first time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt earned. The morning the adoption became official, Victor Hale woke before the city did. Not from fear, not from habit, from certainty. Sunlight crept through the glass walls of the house, softer than it had ever felt. The city beyond the hill moved as it always had, impatient, hungry, loud. But inside, there was a stillness Victor had never known. In the kitchen, Lena sat at the table, legs tucked beneath her, reading the same page of a book she'd already memorized. "You're pretending," Victor said, pouring coffee. She looked up. "So are you." He smiled. "Fair." The courthouse was quieter than Victor expected. No cameras, no shouting, just paperwork, signatures, and a judge who looked at Lena longer than necessary. "Do you understand what today means?" the judge asked gently. Lena nodded. "It means no one can send me back." The judge smiled, then turned to Victor. "And you?" Victor didn't answer right away. "It means," he said slowly, "that whatever I was before ends here." The pen felt heavier than any weapon he'd ever held. When he signed, it wasn't relief that washed over him. It was accountability. Outside, Lena stepped into the sunlight and stopped as if expecting someone to call her back. No one did. She looked up at Victor. "That's it?" "That's it," he said. She nodded once. Then, without warning, she reached for his hand. Victor froze for half a second. An instinct he hadn't fully unlearned. Then he let his fingers close around hers. It felt permanent. The fallout came, as expected. Investigations concluded. Some charges stuck. Others didn't. Victor testified where required. He surrendered assets without protest. Names were exposed. Men who had hidden behind him were forced into the light. The villains didn't walk away clean. Some lost power. Some lost freedom. All lost protection. Victor didn't fight it. He had already won something greater. Weeks passed, then months. The house changed again, not through design, but use. There were fingerprints on glass now, crumbs on counters, a calendar on the fridge filled with school events, library days, and one handwritten note that simply said, "Pancakes." Lena went to school like any other kid. Quiet at first, watchful. When asked where she lived, she didn't say here or for now. She said, "At home." One evening, Victor found her in the backyard, sitting on the steps, staring at the sky. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" he replied. "Being scary," she said. Victor considered the question. Sometimes. It was easier. Easier than what? Easier than being honest, he admitted. She nodded. Honesty takes longer. "Yes," he said, "but it lasts." That night, Victor stood alone in his office, looking at the city that had once bowed to his name. He felt no urge to reclaim it. Power had never given him peace. A child had. Lena appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "I had a bad dream," she said. Victor didn't ask questions. He opened his arms. She crossed the room and leaned into him, small and solid and real. "I used to think something was wrong with me," she whispered, "because everyone sent me back." Victor closed his eyes. "There was never anything wrong with you." She tilted her head back to look at him. "Then why did it take so long?" He met her gaze. "Because sometimes the right place has to change before it's ready for you." She considered that. Then she smiled. A real one, unguarded. "I'm glad you changed," she said. "So am I," Victor replied. Years later, when people spoke of Victor Hale, they argued over which version mattered, the man he had been, or the man who chose to stop. But Lena knew the answer. She had lived it. She had been the girl who went through 7 families. She had been the child no one kept, until someone finally did, and this time, no one sent her back. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.